This is Ivy Unleashed, a Gold Ivy production. Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Thank you for joining us today. We are so pumped about the guest that's here today because he talks about something that I think we really underestimate how it controls our life, and that's fear. So we have the fear guy, Mr. Ben Harris. Thank you for joining us on Ivy Unleashed.
Brooke, Andrea, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be in this space with you in your studio in virtually. Yeah, I just am tapping into the energy of it. I feel this is going to be fun.
Good.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. Like Andrew said, we don't really, I think, understand how much until you get into the work of self-growth, right? Of what is really holding me back? What does that mean? Fear. Like, no, I want these things. But when you really get into the nitty-gritty of it and expand your mind, and that's what we are going to invite everyone listening today to just have an open mind at this conversation. And Ben, let's start setting the scene, right? How did you get into the work centered around fear? Like, what was life like for Ben Harris before this part of your life?
I mean, definitely very different, but in a lot of ways still similar. Like, I grew up having this feeling inside of me that felt like I need to do something special. And so something's always been inside of me to follow that feeling. And I know probably a lot of people know what I'm talking about, right? It's like you feel like you're meant for something more than just what's presented to you. And I'm like, I know there's just this thing inside of me that I need to follow. And it was what really got me into it, though, like consciously, was I was about 16 or 17. And in high school, I actually started rapping. And I made my first CD that, by the way, was no good at all. But I did it. And I think that's such the point, right? Is like you have to start. And when you start, it's not going to be good. You just have to start. But I loved it so much. And so I started like selling it in the hallways at, basketball games, at lunch. And then someone approached me, one of the student body presidents or whatever. And they said, "Hey, Ben, how would you like to perform at our assembly? Like one of your rap songs." And in that moment, I felt two feelings. One is extreme excitement, just like, oh my gosh, yes. And then the second thing was absolute terror. But for whatever reason, the words yes came out of my mouth like almost immediately. And so that was my first instance with really feeling what I believe now is like the perfect mix of doing what you should be doing, right? Following your soul, God's plan, intuition, divine will, whatever you want to call it, is like that feeling where it's just like, wow, this is something I want more than anything, but I'm terrified, is the perfect mix of what you need to follow. And then shortly after that experience, my friend who I was rapping with, he gave me a book. And the premise of that book was essentially, if you want to be successful, you need to do what you're afraid of. And so I'd already been practicing that. And then those words put meaning to the feeling. And then me and him actually started, we called ourselves fear fighters. So this is when I was 19. So I consciously started to seek out everything I was afraid of. And then 10 years later, of course, a lot of stuff happens in that. But I finally realized, oh, this is what feels easy or more easier to me than most people. I have a natural inclination. I'm really practiced at it. I'm gifted at it. So I just feel like I need to do this. And ironically, it was March of 2020, beginning of the pandemic. So I believe I was prepared perfectly. The pandemic happened for me so I could learn to coach people through fear. And yeah, that was really just the beginning. Like I signed 4 clients in 1 week and I was just like, oh, okay, like something's here, that people are very afraid and they need guidance to overcome, their fears of rejection, abandonment, failure, what will go wrong. And a lot of people think it's, oh, like you're afraid of heights. I'm like, not or spiders. It's not that at all. It's like the actual stuff that more people deal with, is I'm afraid of speaking my truth to my husband because he might get mad, or there's an undertone of he might leave me, or just like people pleasing, or stress and anxiety. People don't even realize is a fear response, and we can get into it. Anytime you hesitate, essentially anytime you don't do what you want to be doing, it's because of fear. And people don't realize that, but it's really that simple. Like if you're not doing what you want to be doing, It's because you're afraid of a negative consequence. And so your brain tells you to avoid it. And so when you look at it that way, it's like, oh, like everybody's actually afraid. And then the bubble kind of pops, and then you start have to dealing with the things that are coming up.
Yeah, I keep hearing like playing small, right? Like Andrew and I recently have been talking a lot about tapping into your potential. We just released an episode on that. And I think fear of like, what is out there that I'm missing out on? But that's uncomfortable. And to actually explore that, the what ifs, what could happen, right? Like fear of failure. And I'm curious what that work like starts to look like with your clients. Like, let's get into that. Like, what are you actually nitty gritty? Like, okay, fear is there. What the hell do we do about it?
Well, first, it's just like acknowledging the feeling. So, like, I worked with someone today, and we all have different upbringings, different stories, different programming, different conditioning. So it's individual, but how I've structured it, whether it's my courses or whatever, the prompts that I give people, is it allows you to have a response that works for you. So it's not just in the sense like a cookie cutter approach. It's completely intuitive. And with this person, like they've found their soul calling, they're following it, but for whatever reason, they actually feel resentful. For whatever reason, they're actually like when we first got on the call, they were saying, "Oh, I feel very frustrated." And then once we started tapping into the feeling, then that frustration turned to anger. And then letting them express that anger was like, I feel like I don't have a choice. And then that choice, right, turns into diving down these, stories and following the fear down into like what the core limiting belief is, and which was hers because of her experience as a kid, feeling invisible, feeling like people didn't care about her feelings. Her belief was that I don't matter. And so we follow, how I started like way up here, like I feel frustrated. Like I don't know why, but I just feel frustrated and overwhelmed. And that's how people normally feel, is just like, I just feel like stuck, but I can't describe what that block is or invisible barrier. Like beyond that, I try so hard to do the thing, but I just can't get past it. And that's because fear is protecting you from, harm or from disappointment or from failure. So it's really just starting to tap into like, okay, let's just follow the feelings and the thought patterns that you're having. And then we actually get to the root of it. And then it just makes so much more sense to you. And then I start to help. It's really cool. Like as much as I do it, I'm like honestly always blown away by it. I love it so much because I just get to see people every time like feeling just so relieved and so clear and so empowered and so free, because they like this person, like she was actually afraid of like, I'm afraid that I'm not going to find the answer that I'm looking for. But when she found it, right, is she realized like that was actually the fear, or like that was blocking her of finding the answer. So essentially just going down the path, finding what the root is, and then giving people like a new choice, a new freedom to change that story.
I love that. And I think about freedom, right? What I keep thinking about is people that are walking around completely unconscious of what's driving them, like what's making them make the decisions that they're making. They have no idea because they don't allow themselves to even think this deep to uncover these uncomfortable emotions. You clearly see the benefits of it. We do as coaches, right? But there's so many people even that I know that refuse to dig deeper, refuse to do therapy or coaching. And so what kind of light bulb moments have you seen besides this one, where of like what people have uncovered and how it's created a different trajectory in their life? Or maybe even for you with all of this, like facing your fears.
That's actually what I was going to go to. So I'm glad you asked that about myself. There's just so many. The one that's coming up is the one with my partner. Like she and I, when we first got together, there's this thing that I know men and women deal with, but I know just because I'm a man, like more men deal with this, but I feel like this is helpful for women to know too, that we have this association with a fear of commitment because we believe that we'll lose our freedom. But this was unconscious to me, right? Is to kind of like, to me, I just thought like, actually, like, yeah, I was just so resistant, even though it's like my heart knew this is what I wanted. It took a lot of patience and both of us, dancing and coming back together and like I mean, the good news is like both of us are willing, even from the beginning, to go to these places. Like, so that's always helpful is when you have two willing participants instead of just one, because that's almost nearly impossible to, make a relationship work. So, and I remember just feeling there's something happened and it triggered me so bad. I remember we were in bed and I was like, my nervous system got so activated that I started like convulsing and like shivering and shaking. And people would be like, what the hell is happening? Like, what is that? It's actually like my body, so scared that it's shaking, but also it's releasing, the trauma that I've felt before in my life, like the hurtful experiences. And that fear of commitment, of losing my freedom, was actually just a fear of abandonment, which was I'm afraid of being left. So I'm not going to commit to this person so I don't get hurt. And when I realized that, right, that was like the freedom to me, which ironically, right, my fear of losing freedom, once I went towards that fear, it actually gave me more freedom. And that's really the irony of everything, is that you're afraid of losing something, but that's actually keeping you more imprisoned. And you need to go toward the fear in order to free yourself again and again and again. So that's one. I mean, so many just in our relationship, but I remember that was a big one because that resistance to fully go all in and commit. I mean, this could be in a business too, but once I just went in it fully and realized that I was having this fear and allowed myself to be seen and to be vulnerable, um, definitely like so much changed.
Yeah, and you've said before, just from following you, that you felt really lonely in past relationships. And so I can see from how you understanding yourself more and communicating that with your partner, how that can create more connection. But what was it like before with other relationships, and how did you feel lonely in those?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this, like not feeling fully met, of, hey, I want this life of whatever you want to call it, more intimacy, deeper connections, like going deeper and wanting more, and then that scaring people. And so, like, yeah, definitely my, whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm grateful that they weren't ready for it because I'm here where I am now. Like, thank you. But also, yeah, like that definitely made me feel lonely because it was like, oh, like no one else is like me. And at some points, I remember a girl told me that like, oh, like you're perfect, da, 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 da. The classic, it's not you, it's me. But at the same time, it was the story I took away from that is like, oh, I'm too good, right? Because usually it's I'm not good enough. But even though I'm at my best, I'll never be good enough. Like nothing's wrong, but actually my goodness or whatever you want to call it scares you. And so that imprinted something on me like, oh, like even if I'm like freaking amazing, it's still not enough. So that was one too.
Yeah. Everything you're saying is so vulnerable, right? The work you do is just like vulnerability at its definition. And so hearing a male speak to all of these things, it's refreshing, and it's hopeful that the mental health sphere around men is shifting. So I'd love for you to speak on that. Why do you feel like it's so hard for men specifically to be vulnerable, and how has it become your superpower? How have you tapped into that fear?
That is a great question. So I think it's a mix. I think like even if you look at biologically, women are naturally more, I don't want to use the word emotional, but they're willing to go to these places, right? Like even the fact of like being more connected to children, like having babies, like allows you to be more in touch with your feminine side, and feminine energy, feminine side is emotions, right? If you look at the masculine, it's just go, it's provide, it's task oriented, it's results now, like da-da, like yeah, battle, war, let's go, like testosterone. And but we have both, masculine and feminine energies inside of us. So it's like I don't view, like I'm at the point now where I don't think like, oh, I'm being vulnerable. And I know that's different from probably people and especially men to hear, but to me it's just like this is who I am. And so it's like It's either I'm expressing my full self and my full heart, or I'm not. And yeah, like just men are afraid for a lot of, I mean, I can just speak to a few of them, but not being viewed as strong, being viewed as weak, being look at like not being able to provide, like losing control. Like if I let go of my emotions, then will I be able to come back from that? And of course, there's so much programming and control and like that. Not just men, real like our culture is definitely predominantly like be perfect, don't show emotion, and like essentially just toughen up.
Mm-hmm.
So that has definitely, and even like you look at don't cry, like a lot of people, I didn't even realize, like I used to naturally just think to myself and to like my nieces and nephews, like when they cried, I would say, oh, don't cry. But what you're telling a kid in that moment is like, it's not safe to feel your feelings. It's not okay to be who you are. It's like, just because you're crying doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's like, I'm feeling an emotion that is 100% normal to a human, but that's where it starts, right? Is we tell a kid to don't cry, so they start suppressing those feelings, and then we get our culture today, which is a bunch of angry, resentful, bitter people. So those are just like a few of the things of how we can switch. Like even with my son, one thing that's really helped me with emotions, like he has helped me a ton because I didn't realize how uncomfortable I was with emotions until him. Because when a baby is just like ballistic crying, there's nothing you can do. And in my male mind, I'm like, how do I fix this? That's a very common thing. Like, but I very quickly realized that I couldn't, but it triggered me. Like it honestly like made me really upset and like angry because I had that within myself that I didn't feel like I could be that. And so I couldn't handle his until I went within myself and learned that like, oh, like this is something, it's not him. This is my own discomfort with emotions and crying. And I need to do that within myself so I can let him know that it's okay to like literally just be himself. And he's a baby who is just communicating that he's hungry or upset or tired, like he's not just like crying for no reason, like he's trying to tell us something. So that was a roundabout way of asking the question, but those are some things that have helped me.
Yeah. And I have little kids and I totally get it that it's almost like you're trying to protect the other people around from having to hear their tantrum, instead of just being like, oh, you're upset, just repeating back to them what they're feeling once they get a little older. I know your little guy's little, but like just letting them feel seen, like, oh, wow, you're having a tough time, instead of like, who cares about the lady at the grocery store? Like, whatever. Scowl at me. I don't care. Like the kid is what's important. So they know they can feel it. And I keep thinking about how people in our society or our culture will say things like, oh, everybody's getting soft these days, but it's probably resentment because they couldn't be soft, right? It's probably them being like, when I was a kid, I had to suck it up. So, and so I love that you said it's probably resentment of like, I wasn't allowed to show this range of emotion. Like, why should you be able to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, that is a funny comment, right? Like we're getting soft. And I remember like as a millennial, right? Like we're lazy. Like there's always going to be these things that, and like I probably think there's some truth to it in the sense that like, but new generations bring in new like tools, and new ways of doing life. So if you look at millennials, like we freaking changed the way people like freedom, like doing business, like from your home, working from home, traveling, like that whole thing. But of course, there is a lot of people who have like we procrastinate and don't have like discipline. So there's there's balance, right? And so I imagine there is some like why we're calling people soft is because yeah, it's triggering them, and also we haven't had the tools yet of how to regulate that emotion, and we're like brand. I mean, it's been around, but for the most part, like in popular society, like we're really just learning. Like it's really really new. So like let yourself feel emotions like publicly or and learning how to regulate them. So it's definitely just like an awkward transition period.
Yeah, I feel that. Like thinking about therapy, even, like voicing, okay, I need help as a male, as a woman, whatever, compared to back in the day, like they didn't have those resources. You figure it out. It's not safe.
Something that I'm working on with therapy and coaching is digging deep into my like very unconscious beliefs, limiting beliefs that I don't, like I know I've just barely scratched the surface of my fear of money. And I know there's a lot of different things that come to mind of like, who am I going to become if I get a lot of money? And will I become greedy? Or how will my relationship change with my family? I grew up with not a whole lot of money, and what will they think of me, right? And what will that become? Because I already have guilt about how privileged my life is right now. I already have guilt about that. And so I'm uncovering all these things about money. And I know a lot of people are too. And so I would love for you to talk about your work with kind of uncovering fear with money and what it looks like to kind of get started uncovering those beliefs that we might be completely unaware of.
I love that. So, and thank you for being so honest about that. I actually just did a workshop about this. Maybe you're asking it for that reason, but it's called Limitless Income. If people want to check it out, they can go get it. But it's so, yeah, there's so much that can be tied into it. But how I would just give people, like, if you're listening right now, like when you hear the word money, what's the first thing you feel in your body? Right? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel anxiety? Do you feel excitement? Do you feel, is it fun? You might not even feel anything. Maybe you're numb to it, right? Because you're actually just turn that part of you off so you don't have to feel the pain anymore. Whatever feeling that money word brings up into your awareness, that is giving you a clue. That's like the tip of the iceberg, and it's giving you an insight into your relationship with money. So, I mean, so many of us grew up in a chaotic, financially stressed, or without money. And people don't realize that there's a part of you that doesn't want money. And because it sounds so simple and almost like dumb that like, why wouldn't I want money? It's like, no, like you look at why you wouldn't want it. Like you just beautifully explained why you wouldn't want it. Because especially because we think in our society that money solves everything. It's not. Like money is not backed by gold. It's literally, it's numbers on a screen at this point. And so what money is, it's tied to our worth and our value as a human. Like you even think about what money, like you think about the words we use, right? What is it? What is something worth? What is the value? And then that reflects back to us, right? Like our worth as a human and what is the value we bring to life. And so we associate that with our own inner worth. Maybe just ask yourself the question, why don't you want money? And just start listing all the reasons. Like I'm guessing a lot of you haven't asked that reason. It's usually like, how do I make more money? But that's actually not the reason why you're not making money, right? There's so many people telling you how to do it, but only you can know why you don't want it. And that's the thing that's in your way from making more. And the cool thing is like, we all have new levels that we can continuously discover. And so, like, I like to tell people, like, especially like what I told people in the workshop recently is like, this isn't like a get rich quick thing. Is like, I have a new level that I'm going to, and so do you, and I'll always have that, right? Maybe for someone that's just trying to make the first sale in their business. Maybe for someone they're just trying to get, a raise or a new job, or maybe someone's making 10, 20, 30, 50 grand a month and they're trying to like double it. And like, there's so many different things that money is tied into. Like it's directly tied to success. So another question could you ask as well is like, why don't you want to be successful? And the very similar reason, right? Of like, oh, like my family could judge me for that. Maybe it makes me look like prideful. Maybe like for me, I actually grew up. I remember this moment with my mom. There were really rich people in our neighborhood, and she made a comment that really stayed with me. I don't want to say all, but I think one or two of this family, like their kids was like a drug addict. And so the story I took from this comment was like, oh, you can't be rich because that'll come with other problems, which we essentially believe, right? And that's not true at all. And so there's two different types you can look for, right? Is like we're afraid of losing money and we're also afraid of getting money. And if when we're afraid of losing it, but that also keeps us in scarcity and in lack, and we hold on tighter. And a really cool example I like to use is just like if you're in a relationship with somebody and if you're needy, like I'm sure we've all dated someone needy, do you want to be around that person? No. What does it do? It actually repels you. And so the same thing is happening with money. Like if you're like grasping and like, please don't go, and like all the things, like it's not going to want to come to you. And there's other psychological things that could be happening too. But like even like I don't believe I'm worthy of money. So as soon as it comes in my bank account, I'm spending it. It's almost just like a subconscious thing. Like I've definitely worked with people who like if they have any money in their bank account, they will spend it because they believe that they need to spend it before it's gone. But then that actually creates the same thing they're trying to avoid, which is no money in their bank account because they don't believe they're worthy of it. So there's so many different things that go into it, but those are a few questions to get you started.
Yeah. What do you recommend once you do become aware of the fear? Right. So like, okay, you don't want money because you don't want to feel greedy or look a certain way. Like, how do we start to rewire that fear? What tools do you have for that?
Yeah. I mean, if people really want to go into it, right, they can check all my offerings. Like I definitely guide people deeply into it. Andrew, do you mind if I ask you questions about it?
Sure.
Just for reference so people can, use
Yeah.
these questions and insight for their own thing.
Open books here.
I love it. So you already described a few of those things. Which one feels like the most scary or heavy to you?
Who will I become with a lot of money?
That's actually really big. What did you feel even when you said that sentence out loud?
Like tightness in my chest and nervous in my stomach.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for even just saying this out loud, right? And because this is why we avoid talking about it. Because it's scary in the body and we're unconscious to it. We don't even know this stuff is happening, but your body's automatically giving you a response to not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you already bringing it up like allows it to feel safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like there's no tiger coming to eat you. It's like you are safe. So that tightness in your heart, right, of who will I become? Like, who are you actually afraid of becoming? Like, what is this story in your mind of not the true one, right? But like the fearful one. Like, what is the one that's trying to convince you of like to not make money because of why?
I think I'm afraid that I will start to value things that aren't what I value now. Like I'm really proud of the person that I've been through my whole life because I've had to go through a lot to be where I am now. And I have like a integrity up to this point. And I almost feel like all that money, I don't know what it's like and I don't know what it would mean and I don't know what it would create. And I like what I have now. I have healthy relationships. I'm very present with my children. I'm able to be here with them. And so I think it's the mystery of if I have the freedom to get whatever I want, what am I going to do with that? Can I trust myself with that money to be responsible and to stay aligned with my values?
I love that so much. So, if you just were to fill in the blank, making more money makes me feel what?
Nervous.
Nervous. Okay. So, you were feeling nervous about it because why?
Because I don't know what it's going to create for my family.
And there's something else you said in there that it was like, I don't trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely having something to do with it, right? So that nervousness is creating, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, fear of unknown for sure. But also, it's like that comes down to trust because it's like if you truly trusted yourself, you knew that you could handle it. Like it's okay. Like we all have new levels of trust to like reach again and again for the rest of life. But let's say you do mishandle it or you do something quote unquote stupid with it. Like, what would you feel then if you're not responsible?
Ungrateful, irresponsible, stupid. I mean, I keep like trying to like learn about money because I'm like, well, maybe if I learn more about it, then I'll feel like I can trust myself with it, you know?
Wow, that was really cool. So you said you're still you're trying to learn more about money so you can feel like you can trust yourself with it. Cool. So there's some truth to that, and also I felt something else in that. So it's like, um, so if if it's stupid and irresponsible, like what is the reflection of earlier you used the word values. So what is the reflection of your value if you were stupid and irresponsible with money?
I didn't have a plan of what I was going to do with it, and I didn't align it with my family's values. I wasn't mindful. I was just irresponsible. Oh, it feels so bad. Ugh.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. Just like take a deep breath and like feel it because the word irresponsible is definitely circling. So just playing with that feeling of irresponsibility. Like it hasn't happened, right? It's not real. But just imagining that, that irresponsibility, like why, like what does that mean about you if you're irresponsible?
Not smart. Reckless. Not living with integrity. I just say more like mindless, like not thinking things through.
Yeah, so you said mindless, right? You said stupid, you said irresponsible. So if all of that stuff happens and that worst fear, that worst scenario actually comes true, it proves that Andrea is what? Like, I am what?
I don't know why worthless just came to mind.
So just feel that for a moment. Like, where do you feel that?
My gut.
It's like a gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, seriously. So just feel that for a moment. Keep breathing.
Makes me want to cry.
I know, I'm holding my breath over here for you.
Yeah. And that's fear, right? Is like hold your breath, tense up, like, because we're literally we're like preparing for a threat, like we're in fight or flight. So it's really important to keep just breathing, like as simple as that sounds. Like, what does that feeling feel like in your gut? Like when you say that out loud, honoring you so much, like for you to say this in front of the world is really cool. So we all like honor you deeply. What so you talked about in your gut, but what does it feel like in your gut?
It feels like sick to my stomach, like I just betrayed my best friend, or like I cheated, or I like I did something I had to feel really sorry for.
Because if you believe that this is going to happen, a part of you or a lot of you believes that this is going to happen, you don't want to feel this feeling and you don't want to feel worthless. You don't want to feel irresponsible and stupid. So this is just one example of why we don't want to either make or lose, why we have this anxiety around money is because we have these unhidden things and you're tying your relationship with money to being worthless.
Wow.
How you feeling right now?
I feel like, man, this is why you hire a coach. Cause like you need people to ask you the questions, right? To understand yourself better and what's holding you back. And that's powerful to know what's underneath me and money.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because it's like your first question, right? Of like, how do people, I'm not sure if there's a question, but we talked about how people don't know what's going on and we're afraid to. But like, this is the answer, right? Like, freedom is within that. Like, it's truth. It's everything the answer that you want is within the thing that you're too afraid to go into. Can I ask you more questions just to wrap it up so you don't end just with I'm worthless?
Yeah. Thank you.
So how our brain works is it's binary, right? Our brain is like a computer. It works in ones and zeros. So it doesn't think that like, oh, maybe I'm not worthless. It's I'm worthless. Period. And so just to disrupt that pattern a little bit, like if this were to happen to you or anyone else you love or deeply care about, like if they do make a mistake with money, does that mean they are 100% worthless as a human?
No.
You said that really easy. Like, do you actually feel that?
I feel like if it was somebody else, I would be like, oh my gosh, it's just money. Like, People make mistakes. Like, please don't beat yourself up about it. It's different when it's yourself, though, because you're like, a freaking idiot. What was I thinking? You know, and just yeah, that inner critic is brutal.
Mm-hmm. And so, but just to ask yourself the question, like, now going back to yourself, like, if you make that mistake, does it mean that you are worthless? Yes or no?
No.
So I felt like that was a bit more difficult to answer, which is normal and okay. That's just part of the process. But even if you just opened the window of possibility just a little bit, that helps your brain see like new possibility. Is it helpful to believe that you are worthless?
No.
Why not?
Because it just makes me feel like shit. And then it lowers my energy, and then I'll be a worse parent and not be the vibrant person I want to be.
Amen. I love that, right? Is because, I mean, worthless does feel like shit, doesn't it? Like, it's kind of almost synonymous in a way. Like, you feel nothing. Like, you feel like nothing. You feel like you don't matter. Like, your value as a human isn't anything. So, yeah, and I'm sure I just know so many people are like resonating with this. And another point I just want to mention, like, it's definitely not helpful. One, because yeah, it just doesn't feel good at all, but it actually creates the circumstance that you don't want to have happen. Because if you believe that you're worthless, even if you have money, you're still going to believe that. Because you said that inner critic is always going to look for ways that you're not enough. And so this is why it's so important to go into the subconscious and into the root, which is, you know, the whole premise of my work. Because a lot of people think, oh, when I get the money, when I get the car, when I get the house, then I will be enough. Then I'll be worthy. Then I'll prove to everybody. It's like, no, like there's nothing wrong with getting those things. But if you're operating from I'm worthless, then you'll always feel that. So it's really important to go into like, what do you actually believe about yourself? Because it's more about the feeling. It's not how much money you have. Yes, we all want more on some level, but it's more about the feeling with money that you have. And so if you believe that you're worthless, then you will always feel like it's not enough and that you're not enough. So I just wanted to point it out that it's definitely not helpful. So instead of, you know, if you were to make a mistake with money, like what's another scenario instead of thinking like, oh, I'm worthless? Like what's another possibility to consider?
I'm learning.
Keep going. I love that one.
I'm learning. This is probably going to happen again in a different way, but I can learn from this. I can grow from this. It's not the end of the world.
I love that. So have you already like lost money by chance?
No, not yet.
Ooh, okay.
We're building a lot slower than we would like. But now I know why.
Now I know why. Yeah, like I have lost money. Like I've lost like a few years ago, I put $40,000 on all credit cards to invest into crypto, and then I lost all of it, and it's a wild feeling. I just love how you said that you're learning, because that's really what it is, right? It's like it's an investment. Like I why I bring up that $40,000 story is because honestly, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am, because that investment is what cleared like the way for me to be open to like finding my coaching path. Like if that investment would have just kept on working, like I'd be on a beach somewhere, you know? But thankfully it gave me the inspiration to actually be like, okay, how can I learn how to make $40,000 through my gifts and my purpose? So we are learning, and hopefully we can learn that lesson, or it'll keep repeating. But just because that happens doesn't mean, you know, we're worthless. So, last question. If you could believe anything from here going forward, like with an absolute truth, like if you knew it 100%, no doubt in your mind, what do you want to believe?
I want to believe that I will remain who I am and my values as I am right now, no matter how much money I have, and can operate from that to make the decisions I want to make.
Yeah. So, how do you want to feel with money, no matter like with a lot or right now?
I want to feel content.
And really, what does that word mean to you? Like content. Like if I feel content, it's because why?
I'm safe.
Mm, so safe too.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of feeling like I am worthless, how could we replace that? Like what does your soul really deeply desire to believe and know?
I think it wants me to know that you're worthy of experiencing more, and it's okay. It's safe. Like, just because you came from this doesn't mean you can't experience more and not feel guilty about it. Like, you're still going to be a good person and care about the people you care about with a lot of money.
And what's interesting, right, is I feel like there's a mix of your values, because part of the value, ironically, you're putting value, right, on the values.
Yeah.
And part of your programming is like being a good person, which also believes that you shouldn't make that much money.
Yeah.
So it's actually partially disrupting those values too.
That's so interesting to think about. What is within my values? Maybe I need to write out all my values and be like, okay, money can fit in these things. You know, one of my values isn't that people with money are terrible people, but obviously I've got more work to do to make sure that that's not moving forward with me.
That last part definitely hit more of the heart more. So if you could just try to say in a concise sentence, like, I am what? Like, what do you want to believe? Like, just to make it super simple for you to take away today, what do you want to believe?
I want to believe that I am worthy of living a financially abundant life.
Boom. So how does that feel?
Like, more exciting, like uplifting, like my chest came up, like it feels like more like forward progress instead of like shrinking. It feels more expansive.
I love that. So continue playing with that. Like, it might adjust a little bit for you, which is okay. Like, I work with people all the time and like our intentions kind of change, but that's definitely what you want to believe. Like, what I felt for me is like, yeah, you're worthy of more. It's okay. Like, there's definitely people in spiritual communities that it's like, it's wrong to want more money. Like, I should just be happy with what I have. Just be grateful. You know, it's like, well, I can be grateful and still create more for me and my family and my community and the world.
Yes.
Like that's okay. You being worthy of more or worthy of financial abundant life, like when you said that, is definitely so much stronger. And like, yeah, I saw you like lift up, right? And like light up when you said that.
Mhm.
And would you agree it's much better than the gut punch of I'm worthless?
Oh, yes, 1,000%.
I love it. So it's like the interesting thing how our mind works too, right? Is if we believe that we're worthless, then we're actually going to subconsciously pick up the evidence to validate and reprove that truth over and over again. Because our brain wants safety. Our brain works in patterns. Like, have you either of you ever bought like a new car from a lot or a used car off a lot? Do you know this example where it's like
And then you see them everywhere.
you actually start seeing the car everywhere, right? Recently, my friend bought a Toyota RAV4, super common, but I never noticed it before because my brain didn't know it had value or importance until now my friend has it and now I see it everywhere. So it's the same thing with our beliefs, right? Is like we're only aware of 95% of what's happening around us because it would overwhelm us. Like we can't take in all the information. And so it only tells us, points out what's important. And if we believe that we are worthless, then it will continue only showing you that. So this is why we're the creator of our realities, because anything is true if you want it to be. But if you believe that you are worthy of more in a financial abundant life, then that's where you actually start to connect. And that's what you actually start to look for. And then things start happening in that way. So what's just one piece of evidence that you already know that is true, that you are worthy of more in a financial abundant life?
I mean, something that I've done that's financially responsible, that like that's what my mind is trying to go to, is working multiple jobs to pay for me to get through college so I can have a better life. And so paying off that debt and working so hard, like I did put that money towards education, which landed me here doing what I love.
Amazing. And maybe you just journal on it, right? You don't have to know right now. And maybe you don't even have to journal. Maybe now it's just, oh, I'm looking for that. because you noticed, I mean, I'm sure this is the case for mostly everyone, is like you actually have to start practicing looking for it because you spent years or decades looking for why you are worthless and why you're responsible and why you're stupid. That's that inner critic just looking to prove what you already believe to be true. That's all that is. Like we are wired for negative thinking because we are looking for like what's wrong in the world to protect us from harm. Like we're fear-based creatures. And so you have to start choosing and looking for honestly what the truth is. Because the truth is that you're not worthless. Like anyone isn't, no matter what. The truth is that you are worthy of everything you desire.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I'm very moving. I'm like, my whole body is like I'm ready for a nap, but
I love it. I mean, it shows you, yes, the power of a coach, but that your beliefs can change, and it takes getting to that root of what you're even working with, right? What is even holding you back, and how can we start to rewire that and look for proof because it's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Andrea, like, thank you. And everyone listening, send some love, like an appreciation for going there, like super brave. And like, I know you've done it before, so it might feel easier for some people, but like, was that super hard? Like, was I twisting your arm or anything like that?
No, it was easy. I mean, it does take like a second to get to like your answer sometimes because you're like, I haven't asked myself this question before, and I think trusting what comes up and just saying it, because like there were times where I wanted to like change my answer, but I was like, no, I need to just say what's coming up right away.
Yeah, because we want to not look as bad, But yeah, like what comes up first is usually your truth, and like it's okay, whatever that is. Yeah, the more honest you are with yourself, that's the only way you're going to change. But it's very hard to be honest with ourselves. Like it hurts.
Well, and just to pivot a little bit, I know something you talk about too is just like that honesty when you're trying to make a decision about what you actually want, and how people are so indecisive, and that hesitation and what that has to do with fear. And so I was thinking of one of your reels that you were talking about this, but could you touch on that, on like what the hesitation is to say your truth or to dig into these things, and what that means with fear?
Yeah, I mean, it could mean a lot of things, right? Like even just that example, like why I don't want to dig into it is because I don't want to reveal that I'm worthless. Like that isn't fun. It's like that's not like going to the beach, So, but simultaneously, it's a bit like painfully ironic that our brains are so incredibly smart that we don't want to feel that, but at the same time, we already believe that. So we're protecting that belief from change, from unknown. So we are much like we will stay in a familiar pain because that's what feels normal to us, instead of choosing like an unfamiliar outcome that could be so much better. Like even though I know, okay, I could change my life, change my habits, look at myself, work on myself, and yeah, like honestly really have a much more fulfilling, enjoyable life. But I'm so comfortable and familiar with this pain, with this misery, with feeling worthless, with this shitty job, with a relationship that I'm just settling in. Like, even though it sucks, you are familiar with that suck. And so your brain will convince you to stay in there because it feels safer.
And I think that's why you need to work with someone like Ben, who can provide, right, that safe place to help you move in that direction you want. So it's not such an overload for your brain, because like you said, that's your brain's job. It's to protect you. And if you do it on your own, you're going to stay stuck.
Oh, well, Ben, thank you for this exercise with me. I hope everybody listening could see something in themselves or ask themselves a similar question to get to the root of how you feel. And if you're driving or you're busy and, re-listen to this. This is one to come back to and like take any of those questions and ask yourself something deeper. And what I also love about Ben's work, not only can you coach with him and do courses, but you can also follow him because he's constantly providing so much value. So Ben, will you tell our listeners where they can find you, your courses, and where they can follow you?
All the things. Yes. Thank you. So yeah, Instagram is the Fear Guy. Very easy to find. And yeah, like if you're very, very new to this, go start there. And yeah, I definitely put a lot of things on there that could completely see how you view the world. And then I have a bunch of free things. You mentioned like intuition a little bit and decision making. I have a free offer for that. I have a limitless income workshop. I have so many things just to get you started. I have a self-guided course, and a lot of the questions that I asked you, people can re-listen to that and ask themselves questions, or you can go inside the course and there's a guidebook, and it's essentially I guide you, even though like I'm not there, I'm still there with you, of walking you through like here's how to do this, like, and like here's how to use the prompts, and follow your intuition, the first thing that comes up, and get to the core root and how to reframe it. So definitely check that out. It's called Fear Alchemy. I do one-on-one coaching, and if you're listening to this on the 22nd or 23rd of June, I'm also leading a group coaching program for other coaches, for other healers, for anyone essentially who has a dream, who has a gift, who has that idea or wants to start their business, but they're not doing it. It's for you to get through those limiting beliefs, those fears, those blocks that are holding you back. So if you've been procrastinating and saying, one day I'll do it, or maybe you're already doing it, but you're not seeing the results you like, it's because there's some block in your way. And I mentioned this earlier, but the invisible barrier, right? Of it feels like no matter how hard you try, you always just feel stuck. And just like what we did here, right? Is like we reveal what is that thing that's in your way so you can move past it and actually start doing the thing you want. So yeah, registration for that closes on June 23rd. Yeah. And if you feel called to that, that's one of the most powerful things I do, because not only are you with me, but you're with other community, and you get to relate to them on. So it's like, you're not only learning through yourself, but you're learning through other people and their stories and their experiences and their breakthroughs. So those are all the things, but yeah, just go check out my Instagram and you can get guided to all of it.
That's amazing. We'll, of course, plug all of those links in our show notes because the work you're doing is incredible. Everyone needs access to you. And for us to be able to share you on our platform, we are so grateful to have known you, for you to speak with us, for your work with Andrea. Thank you for everything you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you all so much, and you're welcome.
And we leave our listeners with 3 gold stars, our 3 takeaways. Would you please share yours, Ben?
Like what we've talked about, right? Like fear is your compass, in the sense that and that people can misconstrue that as it's not it's not follow your fear in the sense that like, I'm going to do what my fear is telling me, is you're going to do the thing that your fear is telling you not to do. Right. So fear is your compass because everything your desire is on the other side of fear. Right. It's like showing you, damn, like I don't feel loved. I don't feel accepted. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel enough. I don't feel free. Whatever lack you feel, is you can find the answer to what you're looking for by following your fear. And then another little nugget is fear is love in disguise. It's complicated relationship with fear. A lot of us were raised to think that it's bad or wrong, especially like in a religious household, to stay away from it. But that's actually just keeping you more stuck. And if you look at what fear really is, right? We've talked about it. It's there to protect you. And Andrea, I know you know this, is like, has one of your kids ever ran in the middle of the street?
Yes.
And do you get mad at them?
Yes.
It's okay if you do, right? Because it's like, what are you doing? Get out of the road. And why are you mad? Because you love them and you don't want them to get hurt. Fear is the same thing. It's the angry parent. It's like, what are you doing? You're about to get hit by a car. Like, come on back. Same thing, but it's actually not a physical danger. There's actually no danger in most of our scenarios, right? Your house isn't burning down. You're not drowning. If you are, you wouldn't even be listening to this podcast, So it's like, those actually, the things that fear is supposed to protect us from aren't usually real anymore in this day and age. And so when you look at fear as love in disguise, you begin to lighten the relationship with it, and you get much more curious, and you actually not just begin to like face your fear, you actually start to friend it. And that's when everything changes, because most people fight it and avoid it and repress it and run away from it. But that's not the answer. Like, friend it, and then you'll start to see some crazy cool changes.
Love those. Thank you. Oh, So wonderful. I could listen to you forever. Which is great because we have 3 more questions. Rapid fire surprise questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Are you fearful at all?
For sure.
He's like, I'm called the fear guide, duh.
So, as you know, I'm a mother, and I know that you have a really cute little guy. What's his name?
Kingston.
Kingston. What's your biggest fear for Kingston growing up in his generation and what he'll experience?
Wow. Great question. So I don't think I know yet, but even just today, like we went to the pool as a family and we were walking through the locker, like there's like a family locker room. You guys know Lifetime. It's from Minnesota. So we were in the Lifetime in Austin, Texas. And we were walking through like the family locker room and it's summertime. So there's kids camps. And I just heard some kids, I think they were just like making fun of another kid. And like, seriously, like it makes me like emotional right now. I'm like, damn, that sucks, dude. Like, but I know I can't protect him. You know, I can. The best way I can is to like love him and to give him the tools, and also just that stuff's gonna happen, and to like just be there to hold space for it and trust him that he's wise enough and strong enough, and just as he is, who he came on this earth with, to like, because he is, everyone is, just to be himself.
That's beautiful.
One little lucky dude to have you as a dad.
And I'm lucky too, seriously.
Okay, my question is around business. What is a fear you have right now that you're working through to level up in your own business?
I'm in this middle of the launch, and how these things usually work, it's like a spiral where you might feel like you're hitting the same problem, but you've just gone in a circle, but it's not like a circle in a sand, right? It's like a spiral. So you're actually leveling up and it feels like the same, but it's actually different. And so for me, it's like responsibility. And this actually came up today where it's like I can feel like I'm really, really tapping into something, like my power, my gifts, my voice, just so clear, so powerful, more than confidence more than ever. And like I can see the results, which is awesome. But also I felt something today. I was like, oh, like I just noticed how I could self-sabotage myself because it's like too good. And this is why we self-sabotage, right? We have an upper limit. So I kind of mentioned this before of like the familiar pain and unknown alternative. But it's like, I haven't experienced this, right? Andrew, like what you're talking about, like with money, and like to me, it's responsibility and like just all that comes with that. And I'm like, oh, I can feel it. Like I literally, like in my head and my body, I'm like stretching. And so luckily for me, I guess it's not so much like a fear. Like, of course it is deep down, but I've, felt it and danced with it enough. Like I can just feel like, oh, like if I believe that I was unworthy of this, then I could see how I could like sabotage myself.
That's awesome that you're aware. So you'll be less likely to self-sabotage. Or if you start to do things, you'll be like, oh, yep, I'm just
seen this movie before.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. And our last question is, if you could go back and tell younger Ben something, what would you tell him?
I feel like the first response is just like, you are loved, but I felt loved. To me, it's like in this moment, this has to do with the conversation I had yesterday and the coaching session I had earlier today, but like that it's okay to like take up space and like, because definitely I was always the good kid. And so I was afraid to be bad. And so like, yo, like, no, Ben, like, what do you want? Like, voice it, claim it. It's okay to disagree. Like, what do you want? Like, voice that. And if that's what's coming up.
That's powerful.
I love it. Well, man, this has been wonderful. And I'm so happy that we can continue to follow you and listen to you and do your courses. And it's been wonderful. And I'm really grateful for this coaching session, not just for me, definitely for me and our business, but for everybody else listening to, just to know what a coaching session, just the surface of it could look like. Like if we did that in this amount of time, what that could look like on an ongoing basis. And it's powerful stuff. And so thank you for the work you're doing. Like Brooke said, we're so happy that we have your time. It's so valuable. You've got a little guy to go play with. And how we always leave every episode is with a piece of gold, a quote that speaks to you.
This is one of my favorite quotes of all time, and it summarizes this conversation perfectly. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.